It's the reason that I love speaking is because too often, especially as women, I feel like we are fearful of saying, I got something wrong because we already have the cards stacked against us in, 90% male sales organizations.
This isn't your average revenue podcast. It's Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist, powered by ComSoar. And it's your new work bestie. Through conversations with other women in the revenue space, Ashley and Katrina get candid about their unique experiences, help women tackle challenges in the workplace, and uncover ways to grow as revenue pros. Maybe you'll learn a little, cry a little, laugh a little, have an epiphany, or at the very least, get a killer playlist to listen to while you work. Being a woman in this industry is wild. Let's talk about it.
Hi, I'm Ashley.
And I'm Katrina.
Welcome to Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist. Today, we'll be joined by the amazing Jen Allen-Knuth, Head of Community at Lavender. But before getting into this episode, we'd like to quickly introduce ourselves and give a little bit of background context on the purpose of our podcast.
So as many of you may have picked up from our title, our podcast does have a bit of a musical twist to it. The Infinite Revenue Playlist was inspired by the concept of having a walk-up song, since many times sellers and other people in revenue-related roles are often compared to athletes. So the walk-up song is something that's supposed to pump you up before you step out on the field, or in our case, pump you up before you walk into work and crush your day.
So my name is Ashley Coghill, and I am an AE at Seismic. My walk-up song is Boss Bitch by Doja Cat. And I picked this song, even though my company said that it wasn't appropriate for work, because it's full of confidence and it pumps me up. I love the line, I wear the hat and I wear the pants, because we do.
And I think that's the perfect walk-up song for you. And my name is Katrina Redden. I'm part of the founding sales team at ComSoar, a company all about community and community building. And my walk-up song, although very cheesy, is How Far I'll Go by Alicia Cara, the version from the movie Moana. And I specifically love the lyric, see the line where the sky meets the sky, it calls me and no one knows how far it goes. If the wind in my sail and the sea stays behind me, one day I'll know how far it goes, because it's all about strength, independence, and pointing it out that the sky is truly the limit. So our podcast, Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist, is all about elevating the many voices of women in revenue. And by having each of our guests choose their own walk-up song, we get to let their personalities and creativity shine. Our guests are free to choose any song they like and explain why it speaks to them as a professional in the revenue space or how it relates to the topics of our conversation.
With all of that in mind, we'd like to introduce our guest, Jen Allen-Knuth. Jen, thank you for being here. Can you please share your choice for your walk-up song?
Well, now my walk-up song is just like put to shame because y'all's are so good. Maybe I should have gone first. So my walk-up song that I picked was Coldplay, Sky Full of Stars, because it was actually my wedding song. I just got married last month. So it's very topical for me. And I just love how it speaks to hope and what we're able to achieve when we put our heart to it.
Well, first of all, congratulations on getting married.
Thanks.
That's amazing. And Ashley and I were chatting about your song before you hopped on. We thought it was perfect for people specifically in sales, roles, because of the line, I don't care, go on and tear me apart. I don't care if you do, because a sky is in a sky full of stars, specifically because as a salesperson, sometimes you do get torn apart by prospects, customers, your director, your SVP. And it's like, you know what? That's all right. The sky's full of stars. You'll try again and you'll reach it eventually.
I think you two just need to do another podcast on just straight up song analysis and pulling out people's favorite lyrics, because you've got a gift. You're gifted at this.
We've had some guests that have come up with some really amazing explanations. And I've been put on the spot before. Like, you have to tie this specific thing to the topic, and they were not related at all. So I'm really good at pretending that something actually makes sense, even if it doesn't. So
hey, it's a good skill even for outreach, because sometimes if you want to personalize it, you have to find this super random, obscure thing from their Twitter and somehow tie eating lunch to ROI for reports and things like that. So you know what? It fits into the sales process perfectly.
Amen.
Jen, I'm going to read your bio really quick just so everybody knows who you are. I don't know that there's that many people out there in our audience that don't know who you are because you work at the hottest tech startup in the land. But just in case, Jen is currently heading up community growth at Lavender. We like to call it the ultimate AI email writing coach that helps sales teams get replies. She's also the co-founder of the Social Community, a free community for social media managers and creators to share and learn best practices for growing audiences on social media. You are incredibly experienced as a keynote speaker. You've done probably hundreds of podcasts, so you're very good at this. You're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all things sales, revenue, and community building, and we're so lucky to have you on today. I
Well,
would
thank
also
you. My head doesn't even fit in this box anymore after that introduction. Thank you.
Yes, and it's a no-brainer for us to have you on because we really want to elevate women's voices, and you're doing that and have been doing that for a long time just by being you. So thank you.
Yeah, we
Thank
see you tag other women in revenue all the time on LinkedIn and amplify their posts and whatnot. And that's what this podcast is all about. So it really was a no-brainer of who we needed to have on first. It was you.
Thank you.
So let's get right into it, right? Tell us a little bit about your background of where you currently are and how you got there.
Yeah. So I'm a bit of a weirdo. I spent my entire career basically working for one company as a frontline seller, different forms of it. So I was started in account management, then I moved over into a new logo kind of hunter role. And then I went over and worked on the challenger side of the business where I was selling more transformational 7-figure deals. And I spent my entire career as a frontline seller just because I always felt like there was so much to learn. I never felt like I had sales figured out. And so I was always really content just finding different ways to sell. And then in 2021, advocated for the role of Chief Evangelist at Challenger because I found myself kind of more gravitating towards opening deals, less thrill of closing them. And so I did that for a year and then left in December with the intention actually just to go off and do speaking at SKOs and sales kickoffs and things like that. And then I was sucked into Lavender by the Wills because I was so excited about the problem that they were solving. I myself had used Lavender a lot. And so when they talked to me about a role in marketing and community, I was like, I can literally give you 10 people who have done this job, haven't. And they were really bullish on having me do it. So I'm really, really glad it's for it. And that's how I got to where I am today.
I feel like it's been longer than 4 months.
Me
That's
too,
pretty
girl.
crazy. I think I love that you mentioned the Chief Evangelist. I can't remember if there's more to the title than that, but I think a lot of people are buying into the idea of dark social and the whole concept of building a personal brand and then using that for work. And I think maybe people would like to hear how you pitched that idea to that company because it's kind of a cool, different role that's not super common anymore or yet.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. Like I'm starting to see it more, but when I first came across it in I think it was October 2021, I was doom scrolling on LinkedIn and I saw a article Ethan Butte at BombBomb posted and it was talking about Chief Evangelist. I was like, I don't even know what that is. So I clicked into it and he was interviewing Guy Kawasaki, who was at Apple, now Canva. He was interviewing Dan Steinman from Gainsight. And they were talking about how the role of evangelism was sort of different from sales and marketing. It was kind of its own unique beast in the sense that the evangelist isn't marketing the solution or trying to sell. What they were trying to do is help that target audience look at a problem differently than they may have before. So it was very, very problem centric in the subject matter of what they spoke about. And when I reflected on the conversations that I was really excited about in my day, I realized that's where I was kind of gravitating towards. So like every 2 years in my career, I would have sort of like an itch to do something different. So I said, I'm going to start doing some of this. I already kind of had been because I'd been posting on LinkedIn, very problem centric content. And I was seeing a bunch of leads come in. And what was weird to me is it was senior sales leaders who never liked it, never commented on it, but they drop in the DM and be like, it's almost like you sat in a team meeting. That's how tight there is between what you put in that post and the problem that we have. I'm open to talk. I don't know if I want to buy Challenger. I don't know if I want to do training, but I want to talk to you. And so I was able to generate enough of that where I was able to go to our CEO, use that article and say, look, this isn't some crazy title that I came up with. It's been done here, here, and here. Here's how I'm thinking the specific it would look like at Challenger. Here's how I would anticipate we measure my success, recognizing it's not going to be as easy as it was when I was a salesperson and I either hit quota or I didn't. But here's how I'm thinking about it. And here's what I think it helps us do in a more scalable way than we're doing today. So I literally put that in an email, brought it to a one-on-one with our CEO. And I was really lucky that, or fortunate that she was open to being experimental. So it's like, it does take two, right? I can have the best
Yeah.
description in the world, but it takes someone who's open and receptive to that. So that's how I got it. And I started that following January.
So what did success look like in that role initially for anyone that wants to replicate and go to their leadership team and ask to do the same thing?
Yeah, I'll speak to it because as a seller, what I started noticing is I was getting fewer and fewer leads. And the leads I was getting were things like they downloaded a white paper. Like, this is a lead. This is someone who's learning. They're not actually raising their hand. And so
Mhm.
I had fell into this motion where I kept complaining about marketing, right? And I was like, marketing needs to get better leads and we need to be doing more events and all this. And then I had this moment. I was really lucky to work for a great boss and he was control what you can control. You can point fingers, you can complain all day long. It does nothing to change what matters to you. And so it got me thinking, how can I actually get more leads that were interested in the problem that we solve, maybe not yet determined to buy? That's what I was kind of seeking. And so when I positioned what is the value to the business, I said was, look, we're spending this much on marketing. We spend this much on paid ads. We spend this much in, these webinars and things that we do, but we don't really do anything to amplify that in a human way. It's all done from our company voice. If we look at and measure how much pipeline is generated off of DMs that are hitting my inbox, I am confident that I can get us to a point where we're offsetting some of the shortfalls that we have in marketing. So what we literally did was say in Salesforce, which is what we use for our CRM, the lead source was like all the different traditional lead sources. And then it was evangelist. And anytime I had a DM come in, I tagged it as evangelist. And that way I was able to track for any opportunities that were built off the back of that. How much pipeline was it? Did they close? Did they? And so I think the last thing, and then I'll shut up, that was really important is it can feel like a fluffy job, right? It's not just being a mouthpiece. Obviously, there needs to be a direct link towards demand generation. And so it was really important to me coming from the sales side to be able to demonstrate my value, recognizing it wasn't perfect, but at least something of substance.
I think it's a tale as old as time, the whole, sales team pointing the crooked finger at marketing and be like, I'm not getting enough leads. It's your fault. But I think the reality is when I take a step back, especially in like B2B, sales is not just for the sales team anymore. It's more of a group effort. It's marketing combined with sales, combined with success, combined with products, you name it. And I think people who are not participating in social selling are not going to be top performers come this year, next year, et cetera, because the traditional tactics are no longer enough. So this evangelist position is more important than ever to kind of ground and put structure behind what all these salespeople can do if they really want to reach their prospects moving forward.
Either that or they're just going to be working way harder than they need to be.
Work smarter, not harder, as the saying goes.
I love that positioning, right? And I think like the term social selling, people get freaked out by because they're like, that just means blowing up people in their in-mails, which is not at all what we're talking about, right? And there was a data point that Challenger did research on that showed in a B2B sale today, 83% of the buying group's time is spent without the seller. That's already abysmal, right? If you're like, oh, we have 17%, but then you think about it, that 17% is split across all the suppliers they're considering. How often are we the only one? So at best, we're getting 5-6% mind share. So what you said around being active in these places where our customers go to learn is in many cases our only opportunity to shape what they want, right? If I just sit and wait for them to decide I'm ready to buy and I know the 3 I want to look at, I mean, competing on features and price, all things outside of my control.
Yeah, I saw a crazy stat the other day. I can't remember what it was specifically, but it was something very similar to the stat you just shared. But it said that heading into 2023, buyers are more informed than ever before they talk to your sales team. So back in the day, it was, oh, I need a CRM, right? I'm going to type into Google CRM, see the first 5 that pop up and reach out to them. Now people are sitting in online communities and asking questions like, which CRM do you guys like? What are you using? What should I use based on my specific use case? Then they take to LinkedIn, they make a post, right? They say, hey, I'm looking for a CRM platform. Like, who's using it for these specific reasons? And they're listening to the people that share common. And so by the time they get to a sales team, they already have so much information on you and your team and the use cases and what people like, what they don't like, that it kind of puts the salesperson at a disadvantage. So if the salesperson is not also in these communities and on LinkedIn, right, they're falling behind in terms of being able to make the sale in the first place.
Yes, the buyer becomes the most educated person at the party, right? It used to be the opposite. Like I had to call you as a buyer. I had to call a salesperson because I just couldn't get this information. I was at an event last night with a bunch of SDR leaders, and they were sitting across the table talking about Orem, right? And it was like one person being like, here's my take, and here's what you should know when you negotiate. Like it is wild to think about what buyers are able to get access to before we're ever on the phone. And that's where I think sales is becoming just an increasingly challenging profession because it's no longer just, I've got to be the best order taker, the fastest person to reply to an email. It's like, I really need to know something about that customer that they don't know about themselves. And in my opinion, totally changes the game, but it also makes sales like just such a more engaging and fun like job to
Agreed.
have.
I think it's more fun than ever. I think about when I started as an SDR and I was told, all right, here's your list of 100 accounts. Make 100 calls today. Make sure you touch one person at every company. And I'd sit in this little phone booth. I was like, oh my God, like, when is this going to be over? And now, flash forward 6 years later, I'm like in communities, like, hey, let's get a virtual coffee. Like, what do you like outside of work? And then 6 months later, I found out Tom really loves crew, and I see there's a regatta in England. I'm like, hey, Tom, did you see this regatta? By the way, I saw you're looking to buy. Let's chat. And it's become, yes, harder, but also much more fulfilling, I think, too, to interact in these more authentic ways.
Absolutely agree.
One of my prospects posted a picture of her with her Frenchie the other day, and I was like, well, I have one of those too. Let's talk about that on our call because it's just instantly like, and that's fun for me. I want to talk about my Frenchie. I don't just want to talk about selling software. I want to talk about fun stuff. So it is more fun. It's more fun and it's more human.
It is. Yeah, I think it's becoming more of a profession to be proud of, honestly, because those that are really doing a great job are doing what you said, right? They're making a true human connection. They're not just like shilling stuff. None of us want to be seen as a sales rep that's like that.
Can I ask a bit of a leading question, Jen?
You can ask anything you want.
I'm
It's your
like,
podcast.
so I on this podcast, I'm becoming the queen of asking leading questions. But
Go.
I think that there's a lot of things that are hard for women, especially like for me, I'm a mom. Like there's a lot of things that I have to deal with that some of my coworkers don't. For me, I think that social selling and like the idea of being able to be more human on LinkedIn or wherever you're at gives me an advantage over someone else who might not. Are there any other things that you think specifically help women in sales related to social? That's my leading question.
First of all, I love the way that you said that. I think one of the hard things for me was being more, I know these words get thrown around, but being more vulnerable and authentic. When I first started posting on social, I was just posting research stats and they were interesting, right? And they were, controversial and that's great. But I never had an opinion because my big fear was someone was going to troll me and be like, you're an idiot. And so it held me back from having any sort of personal take. Josh Braun, who's someone I really respect in the sales space, he actually DM'd me and he said, hey, I've been seeing your content. Can we talk? Thinking like, oh my gosh, he loves it. And we get on the call and he's like, look, it's really smart stuff. I don't know who you are. Like, you've been selling for a really long time. What is your take on this? And it was unsettling to me because I was thinking, now I have to go and be far more vulnerable. And I had a choice, right? I could either go down, I'm an expert, then let me talk at everybody and tell you what I know that you don't. Or I could be like, look, I wasn't the world's best seller. I struggled a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. And that's the path I chose. I decided to be very upfront with things that maybe now felt easy for me, but 10 years ago felt really, really hard. And what I noticed is the more that I spoke about that, wrote about that on podcasts, on LinkedIn, whatever, the more actual connections I built. And so it gave me an entirely different sense of confidence and self-worth than I think I had before. And I didn't go into content that expect. It's not why I did it. But I think to your question, it's having the confidence to stand up in a room and say, screwed things up and I didn't know what I was doing. And here's what I learned from that is so empowering. It's the reason that I love speaking is because too often, especially as women, I feel like we are fearful of saying, I got something wrong because we already have the cards stacked against us in, 90% male sales organizations.
If I'm being honest, I'm definitely still in that phase where I'm a little nervous or scared to post more personalized things about myself, specifically on LinkedIn. I'm more of a what I call a commenter. I engage with other people's posts
Yeah.
and create my own stuff because I feel like I have been, this is kind of aggressive way to put it, like beaten down sometimes as the only woman in the room on a team of all male sellers, where I was literally once told the only reason why I ever closed a deal was that I was a girl that could turn my camera on and smile. And I was like, so I guess it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I did all this research, I built rapport, I understood what the customer needed, and I delivered a solution. And so I do find myself sometimes writing out a LinkedIn post and I will sit there for an hour looking at it and I get nervous. I'm like, I don't know if this is right. Like, I don't know if this is 100% accurate. No one's going to read this and I'll delete it. And so this podcast in particular is really out of my comfort zone. And Ash and I talk about having imposter syndrome a little bit sometimes. And I do think it does stem specifically from being a woman in the revenue space, for me personally, at least.
I always feel like I have to be on.
Yeah. Right. Because if you don't, then it's like, oh, see, women shouldn't be in sales. There's so many. I mean, even as recently as a couple weeks ago, I was speaking at an event and one of the women on the sales team came up and she said, I noticed you're the speaker. I'm on a panel later this afternoon. I'm really nervous. And I was like, why are you nervous? You're invited to be on a panel by your own company. And she was like, because there were a bunch of men on the team who messaged me and said, the only reason you're up there is because you're a woman. And this was someone who was a high performer. And you could just see how much it deflated her. And what was amazing is their leadership actually was like, we have no tolerance for this. Right. And so even though it was male leadership, I'm not in this boat of like men are the enemy and like we're on this side and they're on that side. There's so many good allies. I was so like hearing her talk about what leadership did in that situation. I'm like, that's what we need more of. It can't just be women fighting our own fight. We've got to have people on the other side who are seeing bad behavior and calling it out. But it's wild to me that stuff still happened. And in writing too, it's like that just shows how easy it is for them. If you're willing to put it in writing, you think it's okay.
Yeah. I think, Katrina, to your point about being scared to post things, I'm really grateful that I do work at a company that wants me to do that and supports me. And I post things sometimes like I don't log on to my computer to really dig in for the day until I send my kid to kindergarten because that's my reality. And my SVP is liking it, right? And he's supporting it and he's all for it. And I think that that's really important. And we don't always get everything right. Like there's a lot of men on my team. It's not always perfect, but the fact that they have given me the space to, and I would probably post it anyway, even if they didn't like it, just to be honest. But
That's that boss
knowing
bit.
that, like,
I was just about to say that.
that's what you have to do. Every time you write a post out, then you listen to Doja Cat and then you post it. And
This
you'll
is
be
why
fine.
we have the Walkup songs, right?
Exactly. And actually, I know who leads your company, Katrina, and I'm pretty sure you're in a safe space.
I'm pretty sure you're right, but I just got to get out of my own head,
And look, it's a muscle we build, right? I think part of it is allowing yourself to realize this is uncomfortable. But anytime we build a new skill, it's uncomfortable, right? Because it's a place we haven't been before. So I think as long as you always do that with that in mind, it it's actually kind of a way that you can enjoy it and just be comfortable with that discomfort. So the next time you write one, Katrina, I want you to like at minimum not delete it. Put it in some sort of file and just come
I
back to
actually
it.
have
'Cause
one in my
maybe
notes right now.
right. All right. We want to see it. We're gonna hold you accountable because your voice matters. And especially as women in sales, like that is my big frustration with LinkedIn right now. It's just a shame how many brilliant women I have come across in sales who are speaking up. Ashley, it's why I love seeing your content because you have a point of view. It's unique. You're not trying to fit in a box. You are 100% you. And I think women in sales need to see that that's okay. It's a really big responsibility that we carry on our shoulders.
Thank you. I sometimes regret not starting to speak up sooner because there were a lot of things. There were times like when I was actively pregnant and having kids, I was too scared to say anything. And so I feel like it's kind of like important now to start saying those things because I can't really make up for the times that I didn't talk about all the stuff that was hard. But at least maybe it's a little easier for someone else who is going through that now because it's really freaking hard.
So, Jen, what are the ways that you go out of your way to make space for other women in revenue? Like, what are the things that you do to make sure that they're seen and heard as well?
Yeah, so there's a few things. I think one, I'm not some like I don't have some massive following, right? Like I'm not a 70,000 people following, but as I've grown, I've recognized one of my greatest responsibilities that I feel beyond just like staying true to educating and getting caught up in my own head is to identify people who are making the effort to get louder and to amplify that, right? Like I was always very, very fortunate in my career that I had amazing female managers, mentors. And had I not, I think I would have opted out of sales way early. Like if I worked for some like boiler room type dude who was like, you gotta hit the phones and kick down doors, I would be like, I am out yesterday. It's not me. But I was allowed to be me. I was allowed to be exactly who I was in selling. And so when I see women that are making the effort to post, I'm trying to be very intentional about calling attention to them, whether it's like some little list, if it's an actual post about it. So that's one thing. Two is even at our company. So we're doing this series called Lavender Live, which is every Wednesday. We've got people coming on. I'm trying to be really intentional, making sure we don't like males and just all men point of view. Like it's going to happen from time to time, but I don't want to be one of those companies that is just like perpetuating that. Right. So and we're all like that. It's not just me feeling that way. It's very important to us as a team. And then three is just when people reach out to me, like, look, I'd love to sit here and say I take every single call and respond to every single DM. I don't. My DMs are a hot mess. But there are messages that I have received that literally brought me to tears. Like this one woman messaged me last month and she was like, I don't know what else to do. I'm a failure. Like, I can't do
Oh,
this, just need help. And I was like, oh my, how do you say no to that? Right. So it's just like a lot of times people just need the freedom to be able to say, I'm struggling. And I fear that if I say that to a male counterpart, they're going to judge me. And there's safety in speaking out loud, I think, to someone that you don't know that is only there because they've said yes to something that doesn't benefit them at all. So I try as much as I possibly can to do that because, again, I had that a lot in my career. Like, the give back circle.
that's the whole point of this podcast is to be another place for these women that are too scared to ask for help to learn, whether it's just how to do their jobs better or how to talk about what they're going through. And you might not know this, but I think we shared a little bit before you came on the podcast. Ashley and I met in a online sales community. And we got connected and we very quickly realized we had a lot of the same issues in our jobs. We had a lot of personal things that were the same in our lives. We're both Army wives. We were both stationed at El Paso for a little bit of time, which comes with its own set of, issues, trials, and tribulations. And it was really refreshing to have someone that truly understood what we were going through, had the same exact problems they wanted to work through. And so we came together and we decided, why don't we start a group where other women probably have the same issues as us can come in kind of this open forum type environment and just be super candid and vulnerable about what they're experiencing. And we do this monthly meetup with the Gong community. And the amount of times that women have cried on this call like happy tears because someone's finally listening and finally responding in a meaningful way is insane. But it's just crazy to me that it has to come outside of work, like outside of their team, outside of their director. They're going to women that don't even know them to get the support and the help advice that they need.
I think that's one of the side effects of becoming active in a social network or community is finding those people, because that is like a symptom that I didn't expect was going to happen when I started posting about the things that I care about, is the women that have the same, and they're not liking it sometimes. They're not commenting. They're my own
lurkers.
coworkers sending me a Slack because they saw it, or it's a DM or something. And you're right, like you don't really know, even if a post gets one like, it's impactful sometimes for somebody who might become your BFF.
Exactly. And start a podcast with. Like, that is such a cool story, right? And now here you are in turn helping a lot of other women be able to confront challenges that are hard to them. So going back to what we were talking about before, like, it's just so imperative that we get loud. We have a point of view and we don't tone ourselves down or be like, try to be a masculine version of ourselves to fit into what we think, big creators sound like. It's just be you. Your unique point of view is your freaking superpower. And that is the one thing that we have in sales, particularly, that is not commoditized, is exactly our view of the world and how we think about it and what we've learned in our experiences. So that's why, like, I'm excited to see more women-led podcasts, more people, like creators, getting louder, because it's a voice that's going to change.
So I want to go back to something you just said. You said women shouldn't have to take on this masculine tone and just be their authentic selves. A bit of a loaded question, but to talk about, being a woman in revenue and kind of merging it with outreach specifically, do you feel like the tone needs to change if an email is coming from a woman versus a man? Because I have so many SDRs that have come to me in tears because their direct manager said they had to send out emails in a very specific written way, specific tone, and it doesn't sound right coming from me. It doesn't sound right coming from a woman. And I'm curious for your thoughts on that situation.
Big juicy one, and I love it.
Yeah.
So I think conventional wisdom, how most of us grew up learning how to sell and write emails, is like, you want to show up and have like a really strong force of presence. What we've seen in lavender, and this is why I geek out on lavender, is that actually hurts you. So if you come into someone's inbox uninvited and you start talking at them with a very informative tone, things like, you're losing this much money, you're doing this, and you've never met them before. It's the equivalent of walking up to someone at a party and being like, you're losing money on your car insurance. Like, who are you? And get out of my business, right? I don't know you. That's not an appropriate way to like make a connection with someone. So we've actually seen in our data that sort of talking at aggressive tonality hurts your reply rate. So if anything, and I'm not saying like all men are aggressive and all women are more unsure. That would be a massively inappropriate generalization. But I think what we often have been taught is to be like aggressive, assertive can actually work against us, particularly in reach.
I agree 100% because this situation that I was referencing before, it was about using exclamation points in the email. And her manager was like, take those out. There's too many exclamation points. You sound too excited. They're not going to take you seriously. And she was over in tears being like, well, now I sound like a total a-hole being like, boom, 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 boom. And she's like, no one's responding to me anymore now that I've switched it. I'm like, it is like, it doesn't work for everyone. And I agree. If you come in with this cocky attitude and you have your assertiveness and you tell them all the ways they're doing their business wrong, I think the first thing they're going to say is, you don't know anything about me or my business. How dare you say I'm doing everything wrong? So I agree. I think that informal tone is actually probably better than that typical, I think, persona that people think of when they think of like the aggressive salesperson.
I got a really weird, you know how lavender tells you like what your tone or how it like, is it
Yeah.
happy or sad? I got one the other day and I can't remember what it was, but I took a screenshot of it because it was so funny, because it was like, you're optimistic but angsty or something. Like it was some really weird word that was so weird. And I'll have to find it and send it to you because it was so funny. But I love that it does that and it tells you like, if I wrote an email and Lavender said, you sound aggressive, I would immediately be like, oh no, I can't send that. And I think that's, well, what I'm trying to say, Katrina, is that this manager should have invested in lavender, I guess.
Yes.
Product suggestion for lavender, it should
Ooh.
incorporate people's walk-up songs. Be like, Ashley, you sound like a boss bitch today. Send it.
Wait, I actually love that. This is your song that you're giving, your vibe that you're giving.
I love it.
Yes. I love it.
So
It's
what
true,
are
and
the
it's
trends? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's funny, like, the most often used case for lavender is obviously sellers doing outreach, but I've heard some really cool stories from people that said leaders will put their emails into it, and then it's reading passive aggressive, and they're like, "Oh, that's why nobody wants to respond to me, and that's why my team is disengaged." So it's just it goes back to what we were saying around tonality of how we say what we say matters, and just being super aggressive and in your face, while maybe that was like the traditional way of thinking about a sales profile, I would say that is like one of the worst things we can do today. It perpetuates the worst stereotypes of this role.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of lavender because I just love data in general. I think it's so much fun to see what works and what doesn't work because I feel like it always points out things you never even thought of. And I'm curious, besides tonality, what other trends is your team seeing in outreach for 2023?
Yeah. So obviously everybody's talking about ChatGPT right now. Everybody's
What are your
got
thoughts?
yeah,
Spicy
strong
takes?
opinions. We have a like one of the things when I was considering going to lavender, I really attached to is writing probably was one of the things that changed my trajectory as a salesperson the most. When I got really good at sales writing, I noticed my conversations got much better. And so I'm very bullish that AI can help us in so many ways. Like, I don't have to read an annual report. Awesome. You can summarize it for me. Let's go. But what I don't want it to do is replace me as the writer. I want it to assist me because let's face it, I've been through so many training sessions. I still make mistakes. I'm human. I get lengthy. I use my fancy big words. So I want AI to catch me and help me edit. But there's this quote, Nate Nasrallah said this to me the other day, and I loved it, which is writing is the process through which we figure out what we don't know. And I hate that the notion that a seller wouldn't have the ability to do that through writing and would end up doing that on a phone call, right? And it's like, oh, I don't know a lot because something wrote this for me. So that's my big stance on that is like, let's use it for efficiency, but let's not replace the motions that are really critical for building our skills and preparing us for customer calls.
I think you can also always tell when it wasn't really written by a person. As amazing as these bots get, it can't replace the authenticity of humanity, you know? And I think I saw a post of yours specifically about buzzwords being used and how people are less likely to read or open emails that have these long sentences. And I feel like everything I've seen that's written by like a full email, not touched by human, there's a lot of buzzwords and there's a lot of long sentences. And I'm like, people are going to know this wasn't a person and they're not going to read it, quite frankly.
Yeah. Like I read an article the other day that had me laughing because I'm like, I can't just quite put my finger on what it is. And it was like, it politely over explains the obvious. And I was like, that's it. That's it. So it's like, if you Google, hey, I'm planning an event, where should I have it? At the end, it's like, make sure you have, oxygen in the event and make sure you like name tags. It's like, of course, I'm not an idiot. But I agree. There's just something unnatural. And it's not to say that people won't use it. But I think, again, it goes back to an opportunity for us to differentiate. That human voice is going to mean something in a sea of sameness. So
We were talking about breaking the rules earlier. Like, I love taking the best practices and just breaking them. Because that's how they
Throwing them
become
out.
that's how they become best practices, right? So I'm curious if lavender is going to establish some of those and then the data is going to change because everyone's going to start doing it. But I think also the AI is great, but it's only going to be able to keep up with the best practice. It's not going to be able to break the rules. And so humans who do that are going to be at a huge advantage. And I think that's
Ashley,
great.
I'm just going to like give you my job because you're doing a much better job of talking about it than I am. It's so true, right? Like if you look at lavender, we're learning every day as more emails get sent. Everybody just sends the same email. Nobody ever innovates. Well, it's like when people started saying like the 27 seconds thing for a phone call, like that was really cool and clever when it came out. And now everybody says it, right? So it's not to say it's bad. It's just potentially oversaturated. So I think that's where it's important is to be innovating, but also don't do things that we know are just going to irritate our buyer. Like no buyer wants to read a 300-word email. I used to love writing those emails, but nobody likes reading them. So we've got to just be mindful and courteous in the inbox, I think.
Yeah. I think it's almost time for our rapid fire.
Yeah.
So excited.
I mean, are there any other specific topics or things you want to cover as the final piece?
I think I think as women, we probably all have at least one horror story of a time when we were ignored, downright disrespected, whether it's internal or a customer meeting, prospect meeting, you name it. I certainly have mine. I guarantee y'all have yours, and people listening have theirs too.
Oh, yeah.
I think the important thing is that becomes a bit of a fire in our belly, right? And recognize if we sit, if we stay silent, if we change nothing, we are opening that door for that to happen to all the other women that come after us, right? And so again, just get with your voice, not YouTube. People listening, get loud with your voice. It is the only way we are going to make sales less of a bro club than it is right now. And your voice matters. It's different. It's important. It's necessary. And if you're sitting there saying, well, I only have 6 months experience or I only have a year of experience, you've got more than the person who just started. You've got more than the person who's 3 months in. Everybody's voice matters. And so if you're uncomfortable, just learn out loud, right? Here's something I tried. Here's what I learned from it. If someone's going to troll you for learning, they're a loser, right? And nobody's going to support that.
Straight to jail.
Yeah.
I love that sentiment. And also, something I want to point out based on what you said is it's the new kid on the block that always brings the new ideas, right? If we were just listening to the people with 20 years of experience, we would still just be cold calling and sending 100 cold emails with zero personalization.
We'd be sending faxes.
Sorry, faxes, even further back.
We'd be walking door to door.
Knocking. Let me tell you about my software.
I love when I see early career people like posting. I'm like, that's new. That's different. I hadn't thought of that. So yeah, lean into that big time.
Love it. Love all of it. So Jen, we always wrap up every episode with a round of revenue would you rather. We'll rapid fire ask you a few would you rather questions. You don't really need to explain your answer. Just feel free to shout it out. But we're going to ask you 5, and we're very curious to hear what your answers are.
I'm so curious what these are. We've not prepped for these. This is not scripted.
So many of these were inspired by some of your LinkedIn posts for those wondering why these are out of left field. But the first question is, would you rather give an hour presentation on cost of inaction or an hour presentation on how community building impacts revenue?
Oh, cost of inaction.
Love it. Second question, would you rather work with a customer who always asks a million questions every single day or a customer who never asks any questions of you at all?
This is a really hard question. I like this. I'm going to go with the customer who never asks me any questions.
I would too.
Could you imagine opening a million questions every morning?
It's a nightmare.
Okay, next question. Would you rather only be allowed to post on LinkedIn once a week or only be allowed to engage on one online community forever?
Ooh.
Because we know you're an active girly.
Jeez. I guess I'd pick one LinkedIn post a week.
I would pick the same, I think. Would you rather have to write 1,000 emails only using buzzwords, or would you like to make 1,000 cold calls where you have to incorporate a Coldplay lyric in every call?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Just probably the 1,000 cold emails just for the shits and giggles of watching the angry responses come in. That could be fun. That could be fun.
You're going for the record of most unsubscribes in a day. Final question. Would you rather only ever eat mint chocolate chip ice cream for dessert or only ever drink water when you're thirsty?
Oh, gosh. I would pick mint chocolate chip ice cream for dessert because I truly love it and I could eat it at any time.
It's actually also my favorite ice cream flavor. So,
No way!
and I feel
Ashley,
like most
what do you
people
think
hate
about
on
it?
it.
I love
Me
it.
too.
I did not know it was controversial until your post. I don't even know
Same.
when. And everyone was like pooping on. That sounds really gross, but everyone was like really anti.
Right.
I was gonna say pooping on mint chocolate chip ice cream is the picture is terrible. You can cut that out. But they were like really hating it, and I did not know it was a thing that was.
I didn't either. I thought it was a classic flavor.
Yeah,
so-
we always had it as a kid. That was normal.
People like come at me with it tastes like toothpaste. I'm like, then don't eat your
Not the
toothpaste.
good
Eating your
stuff.
toothpaste. Spit it out.
Yeah,
It's weird.
Well, that's it for the would you rather questions, but all fantastic answers.
Yes. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. I'm just going to read a little thing so that they're going to edit this part out because I'm just explaining to you, Jen, why this is probably going to sound weird. But here we go. The entire purpose of this podcast is to elevate the voices of women in revenue, and we couldn't think of a better role model for women to look up to and learn from than you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if there is one final piece of advice, I think you said we need to get loud. Is there anything else you would leave women with today?
Get loud, support one another.
Perfect. For those listening, you can follow Jen on LinkedIn for incredible sales, marketing, and community content. And if you'd like to listen to Jen's walk-up song, A Sky Full of Stars by Coldplay, as well as the walk-up songs of other guests, you can find our playlist on Spotify by searching for Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist. See you all next time, and go get loud.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist. This show is powered by Comsor, the go-to-network company. Comsor is the complete suite of tools for teams looking to grow, activate, and engage their networks. If you enjoyed the learnings and banter in this episode, there's more where this came from. Follow Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. See you next time.